We're going to go ahead and get into this and then introduce our guest of the evening. Go ahead, Trey.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, listeners, wherever you may be, and welcome to another episode of the Trestle Board Talk. I am one of your co-hosts, Brother Trey, and hey, disclaimer: the views and opinions on this podcast are those of our own, and they do not, in any way, shape, or form, reflect the views or opinions of the lodges or grand lodges in any jurisdiction we may hold membership in. And with that, my brother.
All right, all right. I'm going to let Aaron do the full introduction of himself, and then we're going to kind of get into some dialogue. I've known Aaron since last year. We met through a mutual friend, Bernard Roberts. That wound up being a very beneficial introduction. So without further ado, I'll let Aaron introduce himself, and then we'll go from there.
I am Aaron Bullock, Prince Hall Worshipful Master of a fantastic lodge. Um, Listen, I'm happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here. I heard you did some research, so I'm curious to know what you found before I start telling on myself.
No problem. So let's talk about what I researched. First of all, again, I had to apologize. I really Facebook stalk people, but when you're a guest, we kind of want to be fair to you and what you've accomplished, not you specifically, but just in general. So as I was looking through cyber stalking you a little bit, pun intended, on your Instagram, noticed that you did a lot of rebuilds, and I was like, huh. So at first I saw the chopper. So I used to ride. I used to ride for Masonic Riders. Actually started the chapter in San Diego.
Did
So I was like, huh, it's interesting. Then I saw the truck. Oh, okay, now it all makes sense now. Then I saw the email when we first met. Bernard introduced us, and it was Love Misha's, Love Misha's, right? It's like, what the hell's Love Misha's? You know, Instagram tells no lies, right? Gives me the URL. I go in there. Fake cheese sucks.
it
So we
does?
did something about it. Sound
There we
familiar?
go.
So
Listen,
I'll let that hang out there, and then you could explain all of that to the
yeah,
listeners.
listen, man. If 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 we as Masons are nothing else, we're builders, right? And I was told that Masons were not made; they were born first in their homes, right? I've done a lot of things. I've been on the planet for 56 years now, and those 56 years I've done quite a bit. I mean, in college, I was an iron worker, so I hung steel. I built buildings and fell seven stories in a hole in Santa Monica.
Mm.
Um, I worked in the music industry. I come from a music family. My uncle is a fairly well known guy who started a little known music company out of Detroit. And I, worked for the family business for a little while. I was trained to be a lawyer, much to my father's chagrin. I went into the entertainment industry instead. Military school, did all of that. Um, so I worked as an A&R guy for a long while. Then I went into film and TV, where I, made movies and television shows and music videos. And I play around and writing comic books. So I wrote a comic book / graphic novel with the Wu Tang Clan called The Nine Rings of Wu Tang, which I just sold to Sony as a series 30 years later. Um, then I studied medicine, where I became a naturopathic physician. Started another healthcare company here in Los Angeles, where we employed a bunch of doctors and nurses and then alternative healthcare folks. Um, and then I got into the food business, amongst other things, and that's Misha's. Misha's is a plant-based company. The intent around Misha's was to create a dairy alternative cheese that answered the question I think a lot of the dairy-free or plant-based or vegan cheeses were trying to solve. What we found out though was most of those cheeses were made by people who were vegans, meaning they didn't eat food, so they didn't really know what food tasted like. I'm not
Mm.
one of those guys. I'm a Texan. I eat meat and cheese, and we cracked the code on it. We figured out how to make a dairy-free cheese made from cashew milk. And it's, the essential difference is we make cheese the same way cheese is made. We just change the milk. So we put that on the market. A couple years later, we got investment from the likes of Jay Z and Chris Paul and a bunch of other folks like that. And we got into Walmart and Whole Foods and a few other places across the country. Recently bought another company out of New York called Vertage, and acquired all of their IP and brought that underneath the Misha's brand. And in the mix of that, we got Fresh Del Monte as a partner. And so now we're working on building that out and buying some more things and building some other things. And then, what I do to keep busy is build things like Harley Davidsons and crotch rockets and 550 horsepower drop trucks.
Hey, that's a hell of a way
Man,
to keep busy, but we'll selfishly say that we need to talk about some sponsorships to get us off the ground, but
Hey man,
we'll
let's
talk about that offline. But I'll
talk
punt
about
to
all that.
Trey if he has questions.
oh
Yeah.
man, that's a resume right there, brother. That is a resume indeed, and man, phenomenal. It's always good and refreshing to hear brothers just doing so much. Um, but I got a question.
Yeah.
I always do, and Raul's probably going to give me the third degree for this because I always have questions. So, what made you do it? What made you do? Because as I listened to the all the industries you went into, right, it sounds like a journey of searching for something, and you're exploring. Um, what have you learned on that journey, and what made you do it?
Um, what made me do it is uh, a certain amount of insanity, which I think is necessary, and a very, very deep, incessant curiosity.
Mm,
What I found was um, nothing is real.
interesting. What do you mean by that? Nothing is real.
Nothing is real. It's all an illusion. It's all like pastime.
Mm,
And the like you find I deal with people all the time who have literally billion-dollar businesses or have that kind of success,
hmm
to people who clean the floors for those folks.
hmm
It's all just industry. Like everything we do is not different from how we change our clothes, how we put on new shirts
Yeah.
every day. And it's not the what you do, it's the how you do it. It's the what you learn that you can apply to how you can be. I don't want to say a better person because that puts me in the space of a good versus bad thing. A more evolved person, right?
Yeah.
I have found that all of it really just comes down to how you can have as many experiences as you can from different perspectives, looking at that subject matter, that single subject matter from a bunch of different viewpoints,
Yeah.
so that you can better understand it. And that it really is yourself being the whole sum of all of
Yeah.
it. And every atom has the power of the entirety of creation. So then do we, right, as an individual. And then understanding what is the saying on top of the temple, know thyself. And for me, the entire quest is just about better understanding myself so that I can build a better me.
Yeah. That's deep.
Yeah.
So I'm
There's
gonna jump in real quick. Aaron, you were a little uh, humble in your introduction. You left out some things, especially something we talked about last year that was near and dear to my heart. You were also a professor at Cal State Northridge, correct?
I was a student teacher at Cal State.
Student teacher. Okay, so
Yep.
just having that teaching background, uh, how have you applied that to masonry? And I know the answer, but I want people to hear the answer and how that's relevant right now.
It's the same
'Cause-
thing. You know what I mean? Like it comes from the same thing, right? School bored the hell out of me. I hated school. It just wasn't enough. It wasn't fast enough. It wasn't interesting enough. And what I found to be more interesting was being helpful. Like I was that kid who, for birthdays and Christmases, what I really wanted was the newest version of the newest encyclopedia, right? Because information for me, like, people talk about Elon has that company where he's threatening to plug people into the internet, right? I want to be first in line.
Hmm.
Information for me is so very important. Again, it's part of that building that tool set, and I like to be able to explore the articulation of various things, right? And again, it's all selfish because as I talk to somebody else about it, I get to understand it in a different way. Because you have to teach people you have to teach people how they learn, right? And again, it's the different vantage points. So as I talk to someone else and I have to explain it to them in a different way, I get to hear it in a new way. And it doesn't matter how you write it, right? Your delivery is still, it's got to be specific. It has to be bespoke to the listener. Um, so yeah, so in masonry, same thing. I find masonry. I had been studying masonry for years before I got here, and I had been a Rosicrucian for many years before that. And as much as I think people find different kinds of masonry, somebody asked me once how many types of masonry are, and I asked them to count how many masons there were, right? But you have social masons, we know them, the guys that like to sit around and talk and smoke cigars, and that's perfectly fine. That's what they get. And you have ritual masons who really enjoy the pageantry, of dealing with the ritual. And then I think you have those folks that really do feel that masonry is a vessel of esotericism, which is me, right? Like I'm one of those guys, and I find a lot of the things that I've seen throughout my journey getting here and in other different schools here in the rituals of masonry. And I like to get into it. And then, of course, every now and then, masonry presents me with, what are common problems, right? Like administrative problems. And how do we build this thing or even rebuild this thing to give it more square corners, right? And so I get to dig into that and then try to explain my perspective to the craftsman. That's essentially it.
Well, what do you think the state of masonry is, or specifically Prince Hall masonry is? Um,
Here
yeah,
we
yeah,
Oh,
go.
wow.
yeah. It's
Um,
loaded. Always loaded questions. Where do you think, the
I
state
need to,
of
I need
Prince
to,
Hall
I need to, I need,
masonry
I need to see if my PR person is watching this.
Yeah.
is? Yeah,
Um,
because I mean, you
Mason,
unpack the different kind of people, brothers, who are in there, and I'm curious to hear,
yeah,
where you think, we are, um, just in general as Prince Hall Masons.
yeah. So that is a loaded question in and of itself. Because a Prince Hall Mason must be been something different than a regular Mason
Hmm.
by that statement, right? And I don't know if I entirely agree that that should be the case, but um, I my knee jerk was to say it's broken, and I think there are some places where in which it is in disrepair. There are other places though, you know, I guess just walking through my imagination that there's always been probably some semblance of this in every system or every mystery school or every organization like this, right? Like if this organization, like most, is in the shape of a pyramid, the base of it is broad, and you have many folks down there, and they're doing exactly what they want to do, and probably what they've always done, right? They socialize,
Yeah.
and they get the opportunity, maybe to become better. I know I have through the socialization with other Masons, um, and improve themselves, right? That's part of the goal. Just the talking, just the dealing, just the smoking, and sharing stories, and maybe one of the things we men don't have a lot of. especially black men, historically, we don't like to seek counseling, right? And when we're by ourselves, that can be dangerous. But when we're with each other, especially when we're with each other in the way that we tend to be, it can get very intimate. And so we can share things that are painful or uncomfortable or even joyous, right? Like we have outlet. And so from that perspective, maybe it's fine. Um, from the esoteric perspective, maybe it's exactly where it's supposed to be. I think that the esoteric part of masonry is the very, very, very top,
Yeah.
which is very small. I think purposefully. One, because I think a lot of people don't want to be in there. Even the people who suggest that they do really, when you really see what's behind the curtain, it can be deeply uncomfortable. It can be very unsettling. It will force you to reconsider some of your most closely held belief systems, right? Um, I think it is small because it's not necessary to have that many people in the room, also. Maybe that is less and less true as we move into these new days. Um, I would like to see more of us being a little bit more active around that, but again, maybe it's what it's supposed to be. The middle part, though, the middle part is I think where the administration of the order exists, right? And I think that from the perspective, I'm a business, I build businesses, right? Like Misha's
Mhm.
isn't the only business I've built, neither was Evolution, right? I've probably built, I don't know, probably 15 or more different businesses in a bunch of different industries. I had the first cannabis shop, the first dispensary in Beverly Hills,
Mm.
right? So I've been in that industry. I've worked in insurance. I've worked. I own transportation companies, and there are some things that are pretty true about all of them. In administration, how they're run is very important, and not just how they're run, but how the people who run them are trained to run them. Right. The thing that does seem to be different is there are different, like a medical business is run in a very kind of specific way, right? The transportation company could be pretty fast and loose. This is a nonprofit organization, and this, as a nonprofit organization, can benefit from a lot of things that are available to nonprofits,
Yeah.
considering an if its administrators understand how to go and get them,
Yeah.
right? Like we have corporate sponsorship and corporate givings, corporate finances, right?
Yeah.
We have programs that can be supported by partnerships, corporate and otherwise, right? We have
Yeah.
the administration of programs. We have community outreach. We have this being a nonprofit, everybody in this organization, for the most part, works for free. We're volunteers, right? But the ability, the understanding of how you administer volunteers is different from how you administer somebody who's getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
It must be, right? And so I think that we are currently suffering Prince Hall on the whole because we have lost sight of the fact that we are a nonprofit organization, that we're for real nonprofit organization, and we could have a lot more. We could have a lot more in infrastructure. We could have a lot more in finance. We could have a lot more in support. We could have a lot more in programming, which is our mandate, right?
Yeah.
Social programming, how we help our society directly, close to us and then at distance. And so I think we can do a lot better. I think we can do a lot more. I understand that part of that also is due to, I mean, look, if you look at the Divine Nine, right? And if you look at 100 Black Men, and if you look at the Boule, and if you look at all these other organizations, historically Black organizations, but not just that, state masonry, you know, uh, organizations like ours,
Yeah.
fraternal
Mm.
organizations. Membership is down. It has been down. Ironically, I think it's going up now a little bit, but it had historically been it gone down. And we have some brothers in our organization who older, like in their 80s now, right?
Hmm.
Mid to late, who were incredibly active in their communities, but also financially in the organization and had seemingly a better understanding of what this is and maybe what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, and they were forced to open the gates, right? They dropped the velvet rope. There was once one here. The West Gate is real.
Yeah.
Right? Not everybody could get in. And so now we have a bunch of members in. God bless them all. Um, but many of them just maybe don't have a understanding of how to administer, not how to be here. I think everybody should be here, but how to run it is different.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the administration piece, excuse me, Trey, the administration piece that you talked about, and you talked about the nonprofit piece. What do you suggest that we could possibly institute to help with the nonprofit status and educating
That sounds
brothers
like a
on the
setup,
nonprofit
Dr.
status?
Randall. You know what?
Alley-oop.
It's very simple.
Hmm.
It's very. This is really easy. It's
Hmm.
education.
Yeah.
It's education. We have some facility available to us for free to get not just college level, but to get Harvard and Kellogg and Berkeley Haas level certified education in the nonprofit space, right? Where a person could walk away from that with real certifications that they could put on their resume that will benefit not just the craft, but will benefit the individual. They could make more money in their daily lives with this, right?
Mm.
It's education. We have to train our people how to be the next set of managers and administrators of our order. It's not just a social organization, and if it is, it still needs to be administered properly.
Yeah.
Go
It's
ahead.
it's I'm glad he said it. And I mean, man. So one of the projects that I'm working on is grants, right? And I went through a course. It's simple little AARP. You pay $100 and you learn about grants. And just in that little time, I learned a lot about I have a wild imagination as far as like business or even ideas in which these things can be facilitators for. And it was very shocking to me that even just the regular business, the 501c8 fraternal organization standing is not really thoroughly understood as far as what's your left and right lateral limit. I'm really interested to hear what are some of these things or these areas where you can get these certifications, and then how can brothers, I guess, be taught how to find these resources, and more importantly, because my struggle has been, and I'm sorry for being a little bit long winded on this question, but my struggle has been is like you got to learn the organization first before you can change anything. And a part of
For
that learning
sure.
the organization is like you have to understand the structure, the flow. Your admin inside the lodge has to be tight, right? Because you're opening yourself up to auditability on the state and federal level. Like there are things that have to be, in place and in order. So the question is what does that look like from your perspective at implementing something or running running a program like that?
All right. So first, I'm going to give a disclaimer. Um, the people who are currently in our administration I actually know and like. And I think that they are wonderful, very good people. This is not a criticism of them directly. This is a discussion that happens in my mind and heart around being helpful, about being constructive, like how we can be additive to assist those people who are at the very top in creating a legacy that is long lasting and meaningful, and how we help them execute vision and maybe turn this thing into a direction that will be supported for years and years to come. This point, the first thing, the first thing that I turned my attention to in masonry was improving my lodge. Right, looking at our bylaws.
Hmm.
Do we have them? Are they current? This is the other thing. So when we think about, we hear in our United States, people talk about the Constitution a lot, and they talk about being people being either constitutionalists, right, or evolutionists. I stand in the middle, right? Um, I think that it is very important to understand the documents that dictate the rules and regulations of your organization. I also do believe, however, that it is idiocy to assume that a 400 or 300-year-old document is meant to stand as marble against time, because things change, things are different, right? A musket is not a tank, right? It is not a bazooka. They're different animals. And so they have to be treated differently. At the very least, the thing that regulates them has to be evolved. So I think we have to always look at our documents, our rules and regulations, and consider whether or not they need to be improved, right?
Just yeah, just for the sake of the conversation here, just for clarity, you're not talking about landmarks. You're talking about business, how we run in business
Talking
and
about how
within
you
the law.
operate your lodge.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
your bylaws should be in place, and they shouldn't be loose. Like I've seen some bylaws, and they're just very broad. Like they're
Mhm.
very basic. I think that we have lodges that now comprise a bunch of different people and different types of people. You have to be able to address that. We look at, for instance, our social club,
Mm.
right? Our social clubs are meant to be prophylactic to not just your lodge, but to the Grand Lodge. So that if you're out doing something, raising money, for instance, right, and something happens, something unfortunate happens, that it doesn't blow back on your lodge or your Grand Lodge. Well, what that would mean is you would need to have your social club, especially in a day like today, set aside from your lodge as its own LLC. It must then have its own bank account. It must have its own insurance, right?
Mhm.
It must have its own bylaws. Now, you can set up a management agreement that creates a bridge between the two things, but you should do that and you should know how to do that, right? And your bylaws should prescribe that exactly how it's supposed to be, right? There are a bunch of different things. But anyway, so first we looked at that, right? And then we looked at our banking. Is our banking up to date? Right? We have a lot of folks who have, lodges, and they have guys who were on those bank accounts who might not even be alive anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, do your bylaws suggest how you should manage your banking as new administrations in your lodge come into being, right? And are you following them, right? So just different things like that. So setting up that stuff, making sure that things are running properly, making sure that the order of communication is functioning properly. So now you have a system that works, right? And then then from there starting to look out into the larger mass of masonry to see what we can do better. But start at home first.
Yeah.
No, so kind of back up a little bit. I really believe in with all my heart that our current administration in our Grand Lodge is doing uh, far and above what I've seen, better than what we've seen in a
We're
while.
working hard.
I agree. I mean, based on the fires in Northridge, the amount of money that was raised, and not just raised, but clothing and you know monies that were provided to victims, especially victims that were brothers. Saw it in person as well as you. I had never seen that within our Grand Laws. So big ups to them first and
Yeah,
foremost.
they did
So
it
so
for the
so by
rock.
no means, yeah, by no means, it's like you. This conversation is shot at them. This conversation is an ode to what we could be, and we think about what we could be in the I guess in the mindset of, let's think about it like cavemen. Let's use cavemen as an example. Cavemen were extremely intelligent for what they did at their time, but they didn't evolve, and so they didn't evolve, which means they became extinct. And that's the same thing in every organization, every business. If you don't evolve, you become extinct.
Historically, every society and every organization will, right?
Right.
But they
Inevitably.
one or two things, and I think more the second thing more than the first. They will
Right.
either die. There's historical there's evidence that cavemen didn't die, that they didn't fail, but that they were evolved into a more efficient new society, right? That there was a new
Right.
group of bipedal beings that came along and swapped DNA with those folks and made new people, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's true probably with most states and organizations. They usually just get consumed into whatever the new thing is
Mhm.
that shows itself to be better. There's a cycle around this, right? Like where
Right.
it starts off, you start off with pirates and they're hungry and they build things and they build things to last and they're defensive and then they get, fat and rich and then they have kids and their kids are soft and then their soft kids get taken over by the next set of pirates,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah, that evolutionary process, my wife and I talk about it all the time, how we give our kids more than we had, but we actually ruin them by doing that. But that's a whole nother separate conversation. But we've talked about a lot of things, and I'm going to kind of open up this box a little bit because it's been a hot topic, and it really has. Not just with you and I talking online and offline. Dual membership.
Yep,
What do you feel about dual membership?
I'm a fan. I am a fan. I'm a fan. I am. So, how long have you been a Mason, Dr. Randall?
Uh, how long? 18 years.
How long have you been Masonry, Trey?
3 years.
Okay, so I'm in for about 4 years, right? So Trey and I have an advantage over you, Doctor.
Fair.
I've been in this for so long that the walls are probably close to your face. We come at this from an outside world, and I'm not going to speak for you, Trey, but I was an old man when I got here. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And I had seen a lot and had done a lot, and not just here. I've traveled the world and seen a lot and done a lot, right?
Mhm.
I have seen and built systems, and so when I come into this and see things that seem like they could be better, or seeing things that don't seem to make sense, I don't feel any pressure for asking the question or saying, "Hey, man, that looks like that screw is out of place, or that's missing a hinge. Something's wrong here." Right? And then when someone answers me, well, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Or, uh, you know, like man, I've heard so many answers about it. Well, they just want to take stuff from us, or they're going to dilute us, and none of it makes any sense, right? And I'm also a little bit of a historian. My focus as a student teacher and as a student in general were two things: the law and history. I taught religious history as well, right? I know a ton about it. And I look at this thing from that lens in a lot of ways. We talked about this earlier. Was it 15 guys?
Mm.
15 guys
Mm,
approached the Grand Lodge of England
Yeah.
yeah. Essentially, 14 plus all 15. Yeah.
and wanted to be what? They wanted to be, what did they want to be? Why did they do it?
Their original thing was just to be Masons, just to bury their dead.
What kind of Masons?
Didn't specify.
Did they want to be Black Masons?
No.
Did they
They didn't
want to be,
specify.
did
They
they want
wanted
to
to
be Prince
be.
Hall Masons?
They
Yeah.
wanted to be. Eventually, they morphed into what Prince Hall was. Right.
But they didn't want to be a Prince Hall Mason. They just
No,
wanted to be a
they just
Mason.
want to be a Mason.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
they
just
just
wanted
wanted
to
the
be able to
square
go
and the
out.
compass and be able to have the rights, lights, and benefits.
That's it. They just want. They
That's it.
wanted.
Yeah.
Look. This is a conversation that could get a little hairy, right? Because I'm going to guess that even their ritual was in
Mm,
alignment with the Grand Lodge's ritual, right?
Yeah.
Their charges were in line with the current at that time charges of the Grand Lodge of
Correct.
United
Yeah.
Grand Lodge, right?
Yeah. Utilization of the Regis poem and some other stuff. Yeah.
I've asked this question: if Prince Hall could step out of his grave today
Mhm.
and have a conversation with Prince Hall Masons, do we think he would be disappointed? My
Um,
answer is yes.
I gotta give a little, I gotta give a little grace to the craft on that one, right?
Yep.
Because I think that through history has shown us that you know Prince Hall or African Americans in Western civilization, we do the best we can with what we have, and it has grown, has continued to grow,
Mm,
and has continued to prosper. But would he be happy with where it is? I would say yes. Would he be a little bit taken back as far as how much we've progressed? It probably a little bit of disappointment there, right? As far as like we could be further along. So I think
mhm,
it's a yes and a no. But you're absolutely right, and it kind of alluded to the first statement you said there with regards to um, Masons. Yeah,
mhm.
there's not a difference, but there is a difference. I like to equate it to like it was born. Prince Hall Masonry was born out of it's a deviation by necessity, right? Not by choice, but by necessity. So I think when I look at it from that lens, I understand why it is the way it is, today. And there's been huge leaps and bounds to go in the right, or well, to change that. But I think there's a lot of history. There's a cultural difference in Prince Hall masonry. Not saying that it's different than mainstream masonry or any other kind of masonry, but you see that even as you go to different lodges as well, right? Whether it be what they represent, the types of people that are in that lodge, they're different, they're culturally different.
Yep.
But that's not to say it's not masonry, and I just think Prince Hall masonry is just a bigger reflection of society in that this group has something in common, but we're all doing this thing called masonry, if that makes sense.
So
Here's a thought, real quick, Amber, for both of you guys, just to think about. What was, and this is a question and a thought at the same time. What was the real reason for the Boston Tea Party? And this is in defense of our brothers now and why they think the way they think. So what was the reason for the Boston Tea Party? What was the underlining reasoning that never got put in history books? It did actually partially, but not fully.
I'm going to ask you to say because I don't want to answer that wrong. I think I have an answer for
No,
that.
no, no. Answer the way you feel like you're gonna answer it, and then it'll be a thought after that.
Uh, the real reason for the Boston Tea Party was a middle class movement that they
Mhm.
felt like they were being impinged. It's something similar to what may be happening here soon,
Right.
right? Where you had a group of very well moneyed, very well
Mhm.
landed white males who were dictating policy that was
Mhm.
not going to affect them. It was affecting these middle class business merchants,
Mhm.
right? But they were being taxed on things. Again, what's interesting? It was the tariff issue, by the way.
Yeah, and so that's the American history perspective, and you're absolutely right. But think about that charter coming over,
Right.
and to stop that charter from coming over. That was one of
Specifically,
the
was that what it was?
specifically that's the underlining reasoning for the Boston Tea Party. One of the undertones, right? And so that they're trying to stop that charter from coming over and they get into Boston because remember Prince Hall had petitioned for a while, 7 8 years.
Hmm.
So to prevent that charter from coming over was a huge reason. So now, as we fast forward and think about what our brothers are trying to safeguard, so to speak,
Yeah.
right?
I,
They want to protect what they think is rightfully theirs. And remember that charter only comes out once every 10 years. That's
that
how
charter
sacred and hallowed it is.
that charter is very important. And I argue this so that
Yeah.
I have another problem. I have another challenge with the concept of recognition,
Right.
right? I have I have older brothers, mentors in masonry who are very excited about this concept. Well,
Mm,
so and so recognizes us, or this or that lodge recognizes us, or we don't have
mhm.
recognition from that nonsense. We have a charter. I can point to it. I can show
Yeah,
you what it is. And many of the lodges that we talk about wanting recognition from or being excited about getting recognition, they don't have one. Or they can't prove it. They can't show it.
yeah.
Nonsense. If you go, we have a brother in my lodge who travels. He's one of the most traveling masons I know. Relatively new mason, but he's a very traveled mason. And he called me up one day and he says, "Aaron, I just walked out of the Grand Lodge meeting. He just walked out of the United Grand Lodge, right? And what he saw were a couple things. He saw a poem about Prince Hall written by Rudyard Kipling.
Oh,
He
Mm,
saw a
okay.
portrait of Prince Hall. He saw a reproduction of our charter. And what he heard from every one of the Masons inside of that organization was how proud they were to be linked arm in arm with we Masons,
Mm.
which they consider to be just Masons. And
Which
and,
we
and
found out in October. Yeah,
with full
the program
respect
manager was there.
for all of the brothers who have some concern about, us. I didn't know that history about the Boston Tea Party, and that's awesome. And I agree also. Look, there's no doubt that if you wanted to be a Mason, 9 times out of 10, then you could not, and even into relatively recent history, you couldn't just walk into a lodge and become a Mason.
Hmm.
You had to be a quote unquote Prince Hall Mason. Super clear about that, and very respectful of that. I just walked the George Pettis Bridge,
Yeah,
right?
the
I was
Edmund Pettis. Yeah,
I'm sorry, the Edmund Pettis Bridge. I
yes,
was
sir.
part of that couple thousand Masons locked arm in arm
Hmm.
walking across that bridge, and it was heavily impactful. And we did some difficult things. We went into the Legacy Museum and a few of the other museums. If you haven't done it, do it with care. I'm from the South. I don't really need anybody to ring that bell for me, right? But you see a lot, and there is important history. Um, I'm of the ilk that says we need to forget more and let them forget less.
yeah,
Hmm.
Right? That's more for them than it is for me. I think. Right? I think we need to
Hmm.
be looking to the future.
yeah,
But that said, I get it. I totally understand the why, and it still doesn't answer if if someone forced your ancestors to be in a small hut and to live in the closet of that hut for
Hmm.
years and years and years and years. But the drive was not to live in the closet in the hut, it was to live in the house or on the open land. In fact, your ancestors actually built that land and then were forced to live in the closet. And the fight was constant. There was always this constant fight to be outside, to be whole, to be a whole human being.
Hmm.
At what point in time does it become okay to accept the state of living in the closet? It does. I don't think it ever does. I think that we can accept the fact of the circumstances. We should never accept the state. We must always, I think, strive for the original intent, which is to be broad and regular human beings.
Well, that's true. But don't we become a little desensitized based on how we were raised? So it's more of our lived experiences versus
Hmm.
something important you said about 15 minutes ago. You said, well, Raul, how long you been in the Nation? I said 18 years.
Hmm.
You said, you guys have a fresher perspective. So that means you're not confined to a box. In other words, as you put it, the wall is not close to your face yet.
You need the insane. You need the
Right.
insane. Every now and then, you need that person or those people who are severely uncomfortable,
Hmm.
who are unpopular, who do things against the grain so that they can reignite the fire so that you can have, or that your children can have, or your children's children can have what they have as their God given legacy.
You just embodied it when you went to Selma because on your Instagram page you got a picture of one John Lewis, and you talked a little bit about the D9 earlier. And John Lewis was a member of 580 Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Right, shout out to them. Right, go mob. But obviously it's a shameless plug. But
Shameless.
that's all good. But a lot we can talk about that too. But you just embodied that, right? You just went through that experience.
Yeah.
Uh, and he was also a Mason. He was also a Grand Inspector
Also,
General. So
he was also Mason. I just think that. So your original question was what I thought about multiple
yeah,
membership.
plurality or dual membership, absolutely.
Yeah. So dual membership being specifically dual membership is the ability for one member of a jurisdiction to become also at the same time a member of a lodge in another jurisdiction, right? So,
Mhm.
for instance, Missouri State Mason could become a member of a Prince Hall, Missouri Lodge, and vice versa.
Mhm.
Plural membership would be someone in Prince Hall in the same jurisdiction being able to be a member of different lodges, right? So, like you could be a lodge of two or three or whatever.
Mhm.
And there's a ton of history. There's a lot of precedent for this. Some older than others, some more recent history for all of these things. My perspective is that I talk to Masons all the time. Interestingly, the guy who owns Fresh Del Monte is a guy named Muhammad Abu Ghazali. He is a Mason. He is Jordanian. He is third down from the king of Jordan. He runs the Air Force, the Jordanian Air Force.
Mhm.
He is a rich and powerful man. I would find a difficult time going to visit his lodge. That's a shame, right? That's a shame. There's a workaround for that. One of
Yeah.
those workarounds would be dual membership, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I talk to Masons a lot, and one of the things we talk about is the ability to be able to not just network outside, but to network in the lodge. You said it yourself, Trey. You said it right. Like culturally, different groups show different masonry. Like we have a there's a state lodge here where I am that there are two of them that are Latin speaking lodges,
Hmm.
right? And they're actually fighting within their jurisdiction to be able to do their ritual in Spanish. Because even though they're Latin speaking, they still aren't allowed to do the ritual in Spanish.
Which is a lot of
But
history there why they couldn't. Yeah.
they bring really interesting different cultural things like their how they dress up for their degrees
Of course.
is more traditional to their Latin or Mexican specifically culture, right? Um, and within different jurisdictions, you have different things. In certain state lodges, one of the reasons they have plural membership is because you may have a lodge that's more esoteric in nature. You
Mhm.
might have a lodge that's more, I don't know, maybe they're focused on engineering or they're focused on whatever, right? And so guys would be members of those different lodges so they can have those different experiences, right?
Mhm.
What I hear from, I just had a first degree and we had a state lodge member. We had three of them actually. Oh, interesting. I had a first degree and a third degree. I had a third degree on Wednesday. The first degree we had a state lodge member there, and then the third degree we had four state lodge members there. And what I hear all the time, whenever state lodge members come see our work, is how deeply ritualistic, spiritual, and esoteric it feels to them.
Which is
Right?
ironic because I've seen their work, and that's a pretty bold statement for them. But go
It's
ahead.
huge. It's huge, right?
It is. It's an ode to us, but their work is pretty impressive too.
I've had a man who was as high up as a man can be inside of our Masonic organization,
Mhm.
say to me that if we were to change our constitution, that he would join our lodge immediately, right?
Yeah.
That's a big statement. Like and it speaks. I don't think it just speaks to the learning, but I think it also speaks to the brotherhood and the camaraderie, the desire for a deeper connection and rebonding this masonry. But the other thing that we get, so we get education, we get network, we get brotherhood,
Mm.
we also get money.
Oh yeah. So okay, let me chime in on that because men lie, women lie, numbers definitely don't lie. So with my own two eyes, seeing, and I won't go into their finances to put the business as a color folks say in the street, but seeing their billion-dollar assets
$1.5 billion.
living off a percentage of their assets, owning their own building with streets named after them in a richy place like Northern California. Let's just say that to
Yeah,
protect the innocent. But let's go further. 30,000 plus members.
yeah,
Let me say that again. 30,000 plus members.
but
Now,
dwindling.
our
Let's be clear,
membership
their
is
numbers are dwindling too.
at last count was 20, in the 2000s, right? Over the last 10 years, we retried it by 80%. 80. North of 80%, we retried it. That's been our
Yeah,
attrition rate over the last 10 years.
yeah,
Now, that math is not mathing, it's going in the wrong direction. So, you talked about numbers and you talked about monetary gains.
yeah.
So, that's
We
my two
won't fix
cents.
that with multiple membership. Won't fix
No,
that, right?
no, 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 no.
And I
It's a
think the
process.
answer to that is you have to give people reasons to show up, right? Like you have
I
to give them
agree.
programs. You have to give
Agree.
them reasons to want to be here, right? Like you have to, I have brothers who I think would be interested in coming in, but if I showed them the state of where we are, they could do other things with their time, right? Like we have to make it a more attractive thing. We have to
Think
power.
about this. Think about this is so ironic. This is so ironic. BB King only had a sixth grade education. He's in the
Mhm,
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
mhm,
One of his most important quotes was, "The most important thing about education is no one can take it away."
mhm.
So think about him with a sixth grade education, having that forethought, right? Having that capacity, that brain capacity, and that mental wherewithal to that profoundness in that statement. He said it, he meant it. It's out there in space forever, and he only had a sixth grade education. So to your point,
Yeah.
what's going to keep them coming back is the education,
I mean, listen,
right?
arguably his sixth grade education is probably better than most college students' education today.
But, but let's be clear, his ability to read and write music
Hmm.
is an intellect that's not normal, right? And he taught himself.
Intellect
So
is
yes,
variable. Like we have to
exactly.
be careful how we judge what intellect is.
It is subjective. It is very subjective, right? There's some objectivity to it, but it's
Oh,
subjective as hell, right?
yes,
It
yep,
it straight up.
yep.
Um,
So when
so
we
I just
talk,
said that when you talk about bringing them back, how do we bring them back? Go ahead, Trey.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, that's it for now.
Look, so for multiple membership again, Prince Hall has some examples of how this can be done. Minnesota has plural membership in its state. Connecticut has multiple membership, dual and plural.
All right.
Nebraska has plural, dual, and a multiple, dual and plural. Wisconsin
Mm-hmm.
has multiple, dual and plural, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it might be at the very least worth a conversation with those grand lodges to find out why they did it, like what drove them to do it. Is it working? Are they being diluted? Are those other guys coming in and changing their rituals and stealing something? Maybe they are. It's possible, right? But we have existent examples that we can go and speak to find out if there is a benefit to it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
also there's method as to how to do it. Like I think one of the thoughts was, you have guys going and being worshipful master in two different lodges. That's not, you shouldn't set it up that way. In
No.
fact, there is a precedent that says you can have uh, dual membership or even plural membership.
You
However,
can't,
you have to claim a home lodge,
and you
and you
can't
can
have it.
only be in a station elected or appointed, a station or
Correct.
place of the lodge,
Correct.
right? In one lodge at a time, right?
Hmm. So I think the workaround though too, if you think about this, because people get think that our
Oh,
stuff will get. Go
sweetie,
ahead.
come, you gotta close it.
Yes.
My reason for doing all the things was walking my
Oh,
dog.
I know. I saw your beautiful daughter on Instagram. Uh, Daddy's girl.
All right. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. So, we got to get better at the education piece as we talked about earlier in the podcast, right? And think about trademarking, right? If we really want to brand ourselves, think about our branding. Like, I can tell you, and I can say this without fear of reprisal, being a grand head of one of the bodies in our state, I really want to brand us. And you and I will talk more about that and how we do that because I
He's,
think, a matter of fact, I know that our sessions should be sponsored.
yeah,
Period. Like we should never have to pay for our sessions, right? And our branding, we should trademark our brand. This should be our brand, irrespective of how we feel or what we fear is going to happen. If we talk about fear of losing something,
mhm.
trademark it.
You
You
don't need to.
trademark it.
We technically have a living trademark.
Hmm.
We have a living trademark. It's defensible. I know. I checked. There are some things that we're not doing that we can and should do. We have some things wherein, and if
We
this is
do.
true for most states, where
Hmm.
there is a vulnerability around copyright and trademark, that
Hmm.
is a very easy thing to fix. And even if someone came and tried to do something nefarious at this point, again, it's a historical trademark and copyright, so it could be defended. But we should do those things. But also, to your point, we don't have to trademark our organization to get corporate sponsorship.
No,
We just need
not
to
at all.
have something for them to sponsor. We need
Exactly.
to be able to give them programs to hook into, and we
Hmm.
don't really have that yet. We can. They're really easy things to do, right?
Yeah.
We just need to do it, and we probably need to learn. We need to teach ourselves how to do it. You know,
Yeah.
Trey asked earlier how you find these programs. I have two answers. One, it's easy, and two, we built it. I have a program that is exist. We haven't launched it.
Mhm.
We're still in an exploratory phase with it, but we have a thing that could be used right now today, and we could get support deeper beyond the programs themselves from the institutions, right?
Mhm.
And within those, imagine this, Doc, you've done this, right? So you're going through your coursework, and
Mhm.
there's a project requirement.
Correct.
You have to build a project, right? And so you have to go get support for that project. But now, before you even got to the project, there's foundational education that's given to you, right? So once you finally get to this project phase, you should have a lot of tools, right?
Yeah.
And we can make more tools available for once you get to this place. But then you should be able to go out with this idea for this project, build it, get it supported, and then come back and defend it, right? And it could be a project, not will be, but could be put in place for our organizations, right? And now you have something. And so then I had a conversation with a couple of my corporate partners about sponsor some of the stuff that we do, and they said, "Yeah, we'd love to. What do you have?" Because they can't just give us money. They can't give us. I mean, especially not today,
Yeah.
right? Let's be 1,000. Especially not today, right? They must be giving to a thing, a program, right? We can do it. We can build them. There's plenty of folks that want to do it. Kellogg, Berkeley Haas, Harvard. These are institutions that some of them are embattled currently, and they still are looking for ways to be helpful under their various mandates. We have to give them a reason to do it. So,
Yeah.
so Trey, look, they're there. I found so much. I found so much in the way of free resources. Again, what I said, the program that I put together cost exactly $0, with the exception of one. There's one where I think you could pay. I think it's $26, either 26 or $72, and I know that there's a gap there, but you could pay that. That's the only one where you don't get an automatic certificate, but for that de minimis amount of money, you could get a certificate for that particular part of this program,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, you go to bed.
Yeah, no, I think there's brothers, I think there's lodges out there that are pursuing that, and it's to your point there about having the business of the lodge set in order, and bylaws and all these things. It's the same thing with education. I think we do a really good job with Masonic education, but
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about just brothers coming in getting educated on life insurance, wills, powers of attorneys, business, that's something that's a gap for sure.
Yeah,
And to your point, it takes time, and unless you have brothers who, you know, kind of run that business on their side and are willing to, to give that. Um, but then again, it's challenging to get people to participate, even though it's free. It's to alludes to the esoteric, group of people at that in the top of that pyramid. They're like the esoteric people, who want to look at business on the other side. There's very few of them in there, and very few of them who should probably be in that room at the same time. So it's like finding those individuals and giving them those resources. That's the challenge, or that's the goal, right? That's the goal
yeah.
to gain momentum on a project. And I know that there's brothers out there. I'm one of them. I'm one of them, from a business, having a business mindset about this thing, because there's so much to learn from it. And I kind of, um, from an esoteric standpoint, I kind of look at the chairs in the lodge as that tool to build, those men, or build yourself as you're going through. You should be learning the different trades of the business of the lodge as you're going through that. And mind you, I haven't, I'm nowhere, going through any chairs or any of that nature, but I already have the forethought to see just how, who's in charge of what programs, how are they running people, how are they delegating, how are they documenting, how are they passing those things along. That's a huge gap that we have, and I think that's every organization. Um,
Constitutionally, what is the requirement to get in the line?
what's the requirement?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, master mason OB.
Right. So you got to do that. But what else? Like constitutionally, what does it say? There are things that you have to do to move through the chairs, but
You,
there's no there's
what-
nothing that stops a lodge. It maybe could be challenged, but there's nothing in the Constitution that stops a lodge from putting up barriers, necessary barriers, according to their lodge's bylaws, for what
mhm.
people must do to progress through the chairs on top of just the things. You going to challenge that, Dr. Rhonda?
No, I just think that you said it earlier, right? When you came in, the first thing you did was really look at the bylaws of the Constitution. A lot of people don't do that because what people fail to realize is that's the governance of your organization. Your lodge is your individual organization. And if your governance is loose and not well written, then your organization is loose and not well organized,
Mhm.
which means it's doomed to fail faster than well organized organizations, for better lack of terms. So
Yeah,
that was the point, right? Just the governance.
right. I think that, look, one of the things that is also true about our organization, some brothers, again, have no desire to move through the chairs. This is not what they came for. And that's perfectly fine, right? But I think that when you do have brothers who have aspirations to govern their lodges in any capacity, then we have maybe an obligation to them and to the lodge and to the craft on the whole to set up some structure for them to be able to grow, for us to know that they're capable, right? And we have some. there are some things that we have that we could maybe use in a different way to make sure that the next set of leaders is certainly, especially in certain levels of our craft, that they can be prepared, you know. But I think we can do that in our lodges as well. You know, I can't go as far as maybe I would like to go. They told me I couldn't do personality tests or IQ tests at the door. So
But you can institute the Clifton Strengths test
that is
at a local level, and that is a real good deep dive indication of how people build and how they progress mentally through certain things, which would be a hell of a thing to institute. Something that you and I could certainly talk about offline.
hmm
But the Clifton Strengths test is being utilized by a lot of powered organizations, and it's effective.
I think it's smart. I think a lot of those personality tests, some of them are trash, you know, but some of them
Like
are.
the Myers Briggs,
Yeah, I used Myers Briggs at one point in time in hiring.
I
You
think
know,
it's okay, but I
it's
mean,
fine, but it really, the truth of the matter is, we know a lot about Myers Briggs now. You know, it is a little bit biased towards certain things, but
right,
it doesn't mean, though, to your point, that there aren't tools that we could and maybe should be using
correct.
to at least look. One of the things I will, ooh, man, I gotta be careful with that. I almost got myself in trouble. Every job is not meant for everybody.
No,
Huh.
Every job is not meant for everybody. And we have to know that that is true. We have to honor that that is true. There are some people, you guys, are you both military guys?
yep,
Hmm.
retired. He's active. I retired.
So here's the thing, some guys are best suited to sit at that desk
Absolutely.
and get that paperwork through.
Yeah.
Some guys are best suited to be on the ground with their eyes on the objective, executing. And some guys are best suited to call the shots, right? But not everybody. Not everybody. And if we get into a place in any organization, my organization, my business, if I put somebody somewhere because I like them, because I enjoy having a beer with them, right? Because they tell funny jokes,
Yeah.
but they don't have the skill set, I'm going to fail.
Yeah.
And I'm not just failing myself, I'm failing them, I'm failing their families, I'm failing every other family that's in the organization because if the business falls apart, they got to find another job to eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I,
So, on the one hand, it's understanding the what the person is suited to. On the other hand, more generously, it's offering them the proper training.
yeah. So I want to share um, on the lines of this here what we're talking about. I believe to a degree that that was one of the objectives of Prince Hall, right? When he petitioned to get this charter, I was fortunate enough to be able to head over to African Lodge 459. I have my my apron here.
Very nice.
Was it? Yeah, it was a. I'm glad I got there early as a young Mason. Was able to see them bring the charter out and was able to participate in that. So it was a really unique experience. All that to say is, as we were going through the different tours and they were explaining a bit of the history, what was easily noticeable was the influence from a business perspective, a black business perspective, that masonry offered a certain segment of African American culture at that time. And I think that that is inherently what we're discussing now is inherently, a part of what this organization is supposed to do, right? And I find it really interesting that we are probably running into the same problems that Prince Hall ran into with regards to business and getting things started and going and whatnot. And to your point, not everybody, was is suited to step in those roles. But I just wonder, you know, what are the things, the tangible things? What is the tangible thing that can be done today that can spark this discussion into becoming a reality?
Aaron, before you answer that, Trey, just remember something that when we had Damian Jack on here, and he said something so profound, it was
Oh
pretty
yeah.
cool. He says, "We're all on a level. We're just all on different levels."
Yeah.
Hmm.
So go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah. I think people, what I say in my business is don't bring me a problem. Bring me a solution and explain to me how it solves whatever problem that you're dealing
Hmm.
with, right? And so I think those of us that are industrious and curious and uncomfortable should be seeking solutions and presenting them, right? And a lot of times I will come up with an idea, and my tendency is to try to talk to the well informed brothers, right? Older brothers that have been here for a while. I will float the idea with them, and I will hear either brothers will say, you know, I think that's a really interesting idea. You should present it, or they will say, I don't know. I think that's going to die on the vine, right? None of that last answer doesn't mean to me don't do it, don't present it. I think you got to present it anyway, because you first exercise the muscle so that you can strengthen the muscle, and then secondly, it might be that it would die on the vine because it hasn't been heard enough, it hasn't been discussed enough, it hasn't been a part of the common conversation enough, and maybe not articulated in the proper way, and you got to get it out there so that you can start. So I think we just have to start presenting these solutions to some of these challenges so that we can, you know, slowly change. I want to comment on something else you said though. When Prince Hall and his band of men petitioned the Grand Lodge of England, there's a misconception that we have in modern day history of who we were, both during and post slavery in this country, which, by the way, was such a very small part of our history.
Yeah.
It was like literally the United States has been here what 400 some years.
Hmm.
The the Moorish culture, and I mean specifically the African Moorish culture, held Europe for 800 years plus 800 plus years. And when I say Europe, I mean Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, and Great Britain. The better part of 800 years. And that was also a very small part of our history. But we have allowed ourselves, or maybe done it to ourselves to a certain degree, to delude ourselves into this idea that we were always this like tucked, you know, chained, shuffling, sad people.
Hmm.
In shackles and out of shackles, we were some of the most industrious, education, knowledge seeking, business building people in the country. Everybody loves oysters today. The history of oysters was a man, a black man. We could eat oysters. They were trash food as far as other people were concerned. This man made it into gourmet food. It is but for him, right? Like we had a lot of these folks who were, you know, brick builders, bricklayers. They had they printing presses. They had a lot of industry.
Yeah.
We talk about Rosewood and these other townships that were burned down as though they were these single one-off things that happened in a moment and then went away. They had been there. They had been built. They had been
Yeah.
building these townships when all of these townships got firebombed. It wasn't one. There was like 13 of them that happened all around the same exact time. It was a concerted effort, and it didn't just happen once. What we tended to do, because we were so industrious,
Yeah.
is rebuild them. We didn't stop. We didn't stop, in fact, until someone got a really smart idea to bargain with us, to give us something else. They gave us the American governmental tip.
Mm-hmm.
Quid pro quo.
Yeah.
They gave us programs
Yeah.
that said, well, listen, if you don't rebuild that bank, or if you don't
Yeah.
rebuild that school, you don't rebuild that town,
Yeah.
we'll give you money.
Oh, you preach it now.
And we got soft,
Mhm.
and we folded in, and we turned into beggars. And then we thought Ebonics was cool, and spinning rims was where it was at. We spent money we didn't have. But this is new. This is not old behavior. This is brand new behavior.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get myself in real trouble because I'm gonna tell you, I'm one of the black guys who's absolutely against affirmative action, and I benefited from
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it, right? Not in the same way that these other folks on this other side think it should go away, but because I feel like we have got to start, we have to stop blaming somebody else. We have to focus in on ourselves. We have to become self-reliant. If that means we have to have less, our ancestors before this country
Mhm.
and in this country were self-reliant, engineering, hardworking. They were not shuffling. This concept of turning the other cheek and letting the dog bite you, getting blown down the street by water hose, nonsense.
Yeah.
No, they were
And
very
we
Malcolm
have to
X.
make the
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
We have to make the decision to stand up. We got to stand up. We have to build our businesses. We have to educate our. They want to get rid of the Department of Education. They're doing it. Let
Mhm.
them do it. It doesn't benefit us. It like look, Pell Grants, all that stuff, great. But if you're upset that our children get a lower level of public education than their children get, and you're still waiting for them to come and do a better job,
Yeah.
something is wrong with you. You then must get up, early school, and educate your children.
Yeah.
If it means homeschooling them first, do that. But this idea of continuing to ask someone who apparently is looking, seeking your downfall,
Mhm.
to please do better because I love you and Jesus said to it, you're an insane
Well,
person.
I just think that it was something that we just did in our capstone too. We were in Virginia last week, and I started off our presentation by saying because we are trying to build a platform to help middle level employees get to roles as program managers and above. And I use a Zig Ziglar quote, and
Yeah.
Zig Ziglar said that you can have everything you want in life if you just help others get what they want. Because the issue right now is that we don't know how. And I'm not saying that as a crutch or a defense. I'm just being honest. We don't know how, in most cases, to get what we want because it's a lived experience. Like our lived experience now is to lean on the Department of Education and Pell Grants, right? Vices, my kids and Trey's kids, and I told my son this is just the other day we had lunch. You have nothing to worry about because your mother's private military. I'm private military. You go to school for free. Your only issue is, do you want to go to school?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've already put in the work for you.
Yep.
Now you just have to execute.
Yeah.
I would I would argue that we, capital we, big we,
Hmm.
may be true, but little we do have plenty of resource. We have resource all around us. We have plenty of people who do it. We have doctors in education all over the country.
We
We
do
have we have
absolutely.
teachers all over the country. We have businessmen all over the country.
I,
Tuskegee was a prime example. It was Washington's idea was, although I didn't learn to understand Washington until I was an older man.
uh,
Brilliant. He didn't
so
ask. He wasn't
so
asking us to
so
be
was Abe Lincoln. Yeah,
workers. He was asking us to be merchants.
Mm.
yeah.
Learn how to be a merchant. The merchant class is the most powerful class.
Yep.
Guess what Elon Musk is?
Merchant.
They're the most powerful class in every history.
Yeah, it's funny, man. But the Elon Musk thing is a little personal for me, just because of the neurodivergence, which I found out, and I live with two people in my house that are neurodivergent. Um,
Hmm.
so that's a whole separate conversation. I don't want to get too deep into it, but just the fact that he's overcome that, he's got some shortcomings, but based on current administration, yada yada yada, we'll discard and let that hang out in cyberspace. But
Anybody can
it,
if you apply
absolutely,
yourself,
absolutely.
right? Like
I mean,
that I think is the overarching point that
hmm
you can and you must, and you cannot be reliant on someone else to do it for you. Because
I
if
can
you
tell
are,
you, yeah,
you're gonna
you're
fail.
absolutely. I could tell you that our son, right, has ASD, and I remember I talked to my wife about this the other day, and she was saying, because I met my wife when he was 7, then I adopted him later, right, and but so before I met them, he had to go to speech therapies, and they said he would never graduate, and this and this and that. Well, he's 21, about to be 22 in a couple months,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
he's on his third year of college,
Hmm.
right? And so to your point, you just have to do, right? You have to have that thought and the support system, and then just do,
But you
regardless
did.
of your circumstances.
But you did it.
Yeah, I mean there was a collective, right? And I can take
But you did it. You
credit.
didn't wait for somebody else to do it.
No,
You didn't hope that somebody was going to
no,
do it.
no. That was an internal thing that you as a parent are not going to let your kid fail, right? You just that they're going to take some bumps and bruises, but as a parent, that parental instinct kicks in. You're going to say, all right, I'm gonna give you the game, whether you use it or not is up to you, but I'm gonna give you the game.
Yep. So to masonry, to Trey's point about masonry and what Prince Hall was set up to do.
Hmm.
Prince Hall was an organization. It was a talented tenth kind of an organization,
Hmm.
right? But it was a talented tenth of an extraordinarily industrious people, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't like they had these dregs and then they were just getting these
No.
few people who, no, these were really, really high minded, high functioning folks, right?
No.
And it was also set up as my perspective, Masonry is designed to do. It was designed to give its community leadership.
Yeah.
And if there is a more poignant moment than now, I don't know what it is, where our brother Masons answer this question: Who name our leaders, our African American leaders in this country today? Who are they right
In the country right now,
now? Mhm.
that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
That's a tough
Terrible.
one because it is, and it is terrible that we have to think about it because the Colin Powell's of the yesteryear are gone.
Yeah. So people are going to say Ta-Nehisi Coates. They're going to say Oprah. They're going to name some slew
Uh,
of athletes. They're going to name all these talking heads. Those are not your leaders.
no,
There
those are
are a
those are
couple of them, right? But they're not enough that you could readily bring them to mind, and that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And
right.
we must stand up and take this mantle on. When I speak about programs, I'm not just talking about small things.
Hmm.
Where's the Masonic Trade School?
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, think about that. Think about what we could be, right? If we institute programs and how we could actually. So here's an example. I use the D9 example. So Phi Beta Sigma and some of the other orgs, not just Phi Beta Sigma, do their hiring internally for six-figure paying jobs.
Mhm.
Have their own portal through the blueprint that they can actually apply for jobs. Anybody can apply for them, but it's more geared toward internal hiring
Mhm.
to boost your own stock internally. And not only that, but owning multiple buildings and building apartments for your seniors. But that's an internal thing that we could be doing.
Yeah, look,
Right. And you said something a few minutes ago, just real quick before you interject. We need more black educators. Trey didn't say it, but Trey's a doctoral student, right? Working as a doctorate in business. and that warms my heart. And he can tell you a conversation we had at the beginning, I think it was last year, when he told me,
Mhm.
I'm getting to this program, yada, yada, yada. I stopped him. I was excited. Man, do it. Don't even, I know there's doubt. I said, but do it. I said, now here's why. When I graduated, when I defended my dissertation, and realized from one of my frat brothers how I didn't realize how big it was. I'm be honest with you. I wanted to do it for selfish reasons, but didn't realize the magnitude of it until I did it. And then when I was telling Trey, when you do it, you get put in a different category. And it's not that you're different. You just get put in a different category because of what you just went through. Not everybody is capable of going through that.
You have the expect. So look, when I'm building things, I need a certain level of expertise.
Yeah.
Yep.
You may or may not have it,
Yeah.
but I'm going to start there,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that's one of the things that you garner. You know, that doctorate does not demand instant respect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But what it says to me is that at the very least you understand rigor
Yeah.
and process,
Absolutely.
right? And that you're not a quitter.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
you will work through a problem.
Correct.
I can hope to expect that, right? And
Correct.
then the respect, and then the
But the
respect.
respect is still earned, irrespective of your education. Respect is still earned, and I don't care if you have three PhDs or whatever, right? You can still be an idiot and be educated, and let's just be
Man,
honest with that.
most of my friends, truly, most of my friends are educated abroad, Oxford, Germany, Italy, here, Harvard, Yale, Berkeley. Most of them are attorneys. Interesting. I don't know why that is. I do know why that is. Most of them are attorneys.
Mm,
And you know, the smartest lawyers are not the one. Hopefully, they don't watch it because I don't mean to insult my friends. But most of the smartest ones are not the Harvard Yale guys.
no,
They,
but it's that hustle spirit though, right? If it's that hustler spirit, it's not again Harvard, Yale, great, Princeton, great, right?
fantastic. And
Great
they make more
academic,
money. They do
right,
make more
right,
money,
right. They
but they're
they
not
cost
necessarily the
more,
smartest.
they make
Yeah.
more,
Hmm.
right, because of the prestige and where they came from.
Correct.
But when it comes down to it, what lawyer you and I had this conversation earlier, and you said it specifically, like a man that's dangerous if he's street smart and he's book smart.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So think about the guy that went to Western Law,
Yep.
right? That grew up in Watts, California.
Yep.
Selfishly using myself, I didn't go to Western Law. I'm not a law guy, but understand that streets that has that street acumen and the business acumen and the academic acumen, and it
Yeah.
combines all of those. The guy at Princeton just partied and played beer pong and
Dude,
did
if,
all that shit.
if I was hiring that guy, if I was hiring a lawyer or any
Uh,
person from an Ivy League school, I would not hire the 4.0 or 4 and above.
nope.
I want a solid C or B minus B student who graduated and then went on to success, and he can show me his success because I'll show you somebody who had to fight for it.
Yeah.
You know, I think, man, it's something just dawned on me. Um, so one is Raul probably never knew this, but I'll say it. One of the reasons why I decided to was I was sitting in a lodge meeting and they were saying, hey, we're getting this brother in, yada yada yada. Here's his credentials and this that and the other. And he actually gave us a before that he gave us a lecture, and it never dawned on me to do that and to pursue that that degree. But what's interesting or why it dawned on me is like what we're doing here and now is relatively what we're talking about doing, right? As far as spreading that that knowledge and wisdom. Um, and if I had not known him, right, I wouldn't have a mentor or someone to I can go to because I've called him many times. Hey, man, I don't know about this one, you know. So I think in Prince Hall, how it relates to masonry, I think it's a culture of it has to be infectious, right? To want to learn and then have access. And now talking to you now, my brother, it's exciting me because I'm like, all right, this is another brother who is he knows what he's talking about, like minded, and there's something that I can learn from that. How this all ties back is, what if a byproduct of dual membership, right, is, or plural membership, is that more exposure to like-minded brothers who are industrious, right? Because as we said earlier with the pyramid, and same thing with the esoterics, there's less people at the top of that pyramid thinking, whether it be esoterics or business, the business of the lives, thinking in that manner, right? What if there's a way to bring us together to do um, what we're talking about doing,
So I
and maybe that's
I have the devil's advocate my own point,
yeah,
right?
there we go.
Because we already have something in our jurisdiction called associate membership.
Hmm.
We do.
You do that. You can be an associate member of another lodge in your jurisdiction. And you can also go there. We have visitation with our state lodge uh, counterparts. So you can go and they can come to our lodge meetings. We cannot, it's arguable because our last grandmaster seemed to be in favor of doing work with them. Um, I've seen some history around that, but apparently it didn't stick. But it sounds like the common idea is you can't do work with each other, right? So they can't work in our degrees.
Yeah.
We can't go in their lodge and do work with them. And
Right.
so the devil's advocate question is, why isn't that enough? If you can be in the lodge with another brother, a state brother, they can be in your lodge. If you can have associate membership, if you live in San Francisco but work in San Diego, and you can have an associate membership in a lodge in San Diego, why isn't that enough?
Well, I would say just like what we're discussing here, as far as you have learned brothers who have certain skill sets, right? And full membership allows you access in a way that associate membership doesn't let you, right? So when we're talking about advancing the craft, at least keeping it within the jurisdiction itself, it makes sense to have more brothers who are industrious be able to have that freedom to go from lodge to lodge and really participate and grow um, in a capacity that an associate membership wouldn't let you. That would be one rebuttal I
Trey,
would have to that.
Trey, I'm gonna disagree with you on it. So you said access, right?
Hmm.
Associate member, you have full access. The only thing you can't do is hold seats.
That's what I'm
You,
talking
you
about.
you get all of the business, you get all of the financials, all of the governance, access to the bylaws.
Just
Everything is
understand.
the same with the exception of you can't hold seats
And you can't vote.
and you can't vote. But
But
outside of that,
you do pay 50% of the dues.
you do. So you pay dues, right? So I think what Aaron is talking about is actually becoming that full member, bridging that little small gap. But for what you're discussing, maybe a misunderstanding more or less, but you do have access, and it could
I'll
have
give you
been a misunderstanding too.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example real quick. So say I want to go and go to another lodge and sit on their grant committee and be, an active member in their grant committee. Can an associate member do that?
You
Depends
can't
on the
be an
lodge's
associate member
bylaws.
inside the jurisdiction. You can
Yeah,
only be an associate member with and another lodge inside your jurisdiction.
they have to be
Oh,
recognized within inside the jurisdiction.
yeah, and that's what I mean. It's
Mhm.
it's having the full ability or flexibility to participate in all functions and business of that lodge that we're talking about, right?
Some
When we're
more,
talking about progressing.
some more theoretical access than
Hmm.
okay. I mean, yeah, deeper conversation. Aaron might have a little bit more to add to it, but
I think I think that for this jurisdiction, um, the greater here's what's true. We have associate membership, and I'm going to guess you probably don't have very many associate members, right? Like it's available. Most people don't know it's available. and fewer people probably do it, right? The issue is less, I think, about plural membership, and it's more about dual membership. Being
Mhm.
able to have membership in another, there is a benefit for a Prince Hall member to become a dual member in a state lodge, because if you have a membership in the state lodge, you are now quote recognized all over the world, so long as the Grand Lodge has recognition with the Grand Lodges of the other lodges,
Gotcha.
right? There is a benefit of the state lodges to join Prince Hall because from their mouths, they get an experience in masonry in Prince Hall that they find valuable from an esoteric and ritualistic perspective that they don't find in their own state lodges,
Yeah.
right? There's also a benefit. I think, frankly, I think the truth is most Prince Hall Masons will probably not join state lodges. Some might, but I think most won't. I think we'll
Yeah.
get more members from state lodges crossing the border over this way, which will put more money in our coffers. I think that we will have a greater opportunity to network with them. Raul said something that I think I resisted it, but it is not true, right? Which is we don't have a lot of information. We have a lot of access to information, but it's not ready, right? But like, let's say, Raul, you had a brother who came to your lives through a dual membership, right?
Mhm.
And maybe he was a big program builder. Well, he
Right.
could come and help you guys build programs in your lodge or over here just generally, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe he had a grant, he was a grant writer, or maybe whatever. Like it doesn't matter, right? There may be some things that we get from this kind of association. And also there is a visitation and associate membership are different. Associate membership is you should not be able to hold a seat in a lodge, more than one lodge anyway. Period.
Yeah.
I just think that that's true, right?
Yeah, that's a
So
conflict of interest. Yeah.
so technically, you get everything that you need, and you could technically under associate membership just switch your memberships. If you really wanted to sit in a seat in the other lodge,
Yeah.
you could just switch your home lodge technically, right? Like you could just
Mhm.
transfer and then now hold an associate membership in the other lodge. With 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 visitation, it's different because they don't have the intimacy of working with us, and we don't have the intimacy of working with them in their lodges, and
Yeah.
there is a difference.
What,
Masonry is an intimate science,
Mm.
right?
what's crazy is that you
I
said
like
grant
that.
writers, right?
Mhm.
And we ironically we have a brother in our lives that writes grants for the NAACP and writes high dollar grants.
Yeah,
So imagine having that brother as an asset
right,
floating around. Uh, to your point with dual membership,
correct.
how beneficial could he be for the jurisdiction
Mhm.
if he was able to hold dual membership and get not only what he knows, apply that and get something else from maybe said other
Lock into
grand
other
lodge.
places, do more, right?
Exactly.
One
And then
thousand
how
percent.
much our finance, right? Everything internally is expanded at that point.
Yeah, I mean, again, arguably, if I were arguing against this idea of multiple membership, I could immediately execute the concept of plural membership because I could say we already have it.
Right.
Guys, can you hold on one second?
Mhm.
No, you're
Give me,
you're good. You're
give me
good.
1 second.
You're good. Yeah, Trey, bro.
Yeah.
We'll button this down a little bit, man. But I think you start. You got you we got to get you on there, man. Lock you in. So I know you answer more questions. I appreciate everybody's listening. For the people that are live right now, live streaming, I've been answering your comments in the chat. Appreciate the narrative feedback. Right, it's really good that we had that interactivity. Uh, Shout out to the boys from up north, number 27. We'll just say that to protect the innocent, right?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the brothers up there up north, number 27. You know who you are. For the narrative and feedback. My brother from another, Charles Smith, aka Professor. Appreciate you with the fire emojis. That's all you need to say. I know how you get down.
Sorry, I heard daughter tears.
Oh,
Mm.
good. Yeah, that's a situation. Especially being a girl dad, it's a situation.
Yeah, man.
Got to handle that. But yeah, we'll wrap up here shortly, man. But and
Listen, I
as
got it's Friday night. I don't have anything else to do but sit and
no,
talk to you
I
good
got
brothers.
you. But
So
as
Yeah,
we
this is
wind
great.
down, man, I just thank you from my own perspective, for jumping on. I know you and I have talked about it. I hope the experience was enriching for you. The conversation was definitely refreshing.
absolutely was, yeah.
Um, and again, just appreciate that you gave, and I tell this to a lot of people, you gave us your most valuable asset, your time.
I appreciate you. Listen, I think that what you're doing here is important and valuable.
Mhm.
We masonry, considering everything else that we said tonight, does not
Mhm.
happen in the lodge.
No.
Parts of it do. But the masonry behind the masonry happens in these conversations. And there is like what is right is what happens at, I don't know, when it all's over, then we'll know what's right. But
Right.
this is a distillation process where we're going to throw things into these vessels and we're going to figure out what evolves out of them, right? So being able to have these
Hmm.
conversations with you guys helps me sharpen my ideas, and hearing these perspectives. And I learned some stuff about trade, didn't know, and it's fantastic. And congratulations on that, brother, and your journey. um but yeah, man, like I'm just glad that you're doing this, and I hope you do more of it. I hope you
I
do
will.
more of it.
We will. We will. But again, it's about you know, unfortunately, in today's society, right, and especially amongst Masons, it's about branding and funding and exposure. That's the most important thing, right? How do you gain exposure to create a platform with brothers that are not as close to the wall as you say, um, can benefit from it. And that's why we definitely got to have more conversation about how do we brand this podcast to give brothers a bigger platform, and a voice.
one of
At the
my
end of the
one of
day,
my
we just want to give them
mentors
a voice.
one of my mentors is a guy named Dan Mapes.
Mm-hmm.
You guys should look Dan up. Dan's a really smart guy. So Dan wrote the first music program for Apple. He was one of
Mm-hmm.
the 11 men that was sent to China when Mao Zedong died, by the State Department. He was one of the first men involved in the Human Genome Project. He's a really smart guy. He has a competitive AI that has beat ChatGPT and Claude a
Mm-hmm.
100% of the time, right? Um, and I had a conversation with him I had a conversation with him on Wednesday, and I was asking him how I could use, the modern AI, various engines, and which one in particular to use to build an agent
Mm-hmm.
to teach me things and also to accomplish some things
Mm-hmm.
for me relative to my business. And he says, Aaron, it's there. He said, if you have a Chat GPT account 4.0 or 4.0A, right, or a Claude account, or all of them, you should be using them because you can literally build the questions that you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
You can build an agent by just saying to it, hey, listen, I have a podcast. This is its focus. What are the top 5 essential things that anyone can do to build a top 5 or top 10 podcast? Right? What are ways to execute in that? What are things that I should have that a podcast like this must have? Where can I market it? And you can even have it do it for you,
Yeah, I
right?
definitely have Chat GPT, Google Gemini, and as a matter of fact, I use it a lot for school because I just put in the PDF and have it build quizzes for me, build class discussions, group discussions, different things that I literally just plug in information, have it built. Right, it saves
Look,
a lot of time.
12 months from now, we're going to be in a very different world
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
sir.
where AI is concerned. But today, it these intelligence are incredibly smart. They have a lot of information. For instance, for what you're trying to solve for, you could literally have it build a database of the top podcasts in the world and then narrow that podcast. Top podcasts by men, narrow it. Top podcasts by fraternities, narrow it, right? And then figure out ask it to figure out what are the ingredients that make the top of the bunch the top of the bunch, and
Mhm.
build a program, even a script that you can follow. You can have it build a list of potential listeners by email. It can glean those things from the internet, and you can have it email invitation to your podcast just by asking it to.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a crazy world.
definitely. And again, we'll utilize all those tools. Still, we'll look at sponsorships because that's still a piece of it. But we will, you and I will continue to have these conversations and many more conversations.
I
I'm
am
sure, brother.
excited
Hey,
about it.
plug y'all plug me in.
Well, you have to be plugged in. Yeah,
Bring the young buck along.
Trey,
yeah.
got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So you're getting a doctorate in business administration.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah. And I asked myself that same question. Um, Let me start with this. I asked myself, well, you're spending a lot of time and energy doing this thing, and you could be spending that time and energy building something.
Yeah.
Have a lot of aspirations for a couple different businesses. So I wrestle with that. But the thing that I've kind of settled on is that I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it because I want to know, I want to stress myself. I want to press myself. I have a pretty demanding job. And everything that I do, I look at it as a building block. I'm building my capacity.
Hmm.
And right now, for what it is that, where I'm at in my career right now, um, it's helping me continue to build my capacity. So that way, when get ready to transition here in the next couple years, I'm going to have so much capacity. I'm going to be able to get after everything and anything that I put my mind to.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm looking at it as a tool for that. I don't necessarily believe that it's going to, help me get a job or help me, make more money, because you can do that with the information that you have. There's plenty of people without any kind of degree that can, they're making great money and doing great things. So it's not about that for me. It's about me building my capacity and knowing that I can do it, knowing that I can dedicate myself to something that is very challenging.
Build something.
Hmm.
Build something. Build something because it is going to be important for you with the knowledge that you have. Because what Raul and I were talking about earlier, right? Book smart, street smart.
Hmm.
Build some things. I had a Columbia advisor once, really interesting dude, super tall, like Jewish. He like had a fro situation, right? And he called me up one day and he says, like, I've been dealing with him for a while. He called me up one day and he says, "Hey, Aaron, meet me out here in front of this library." And it was like far. And so I got in my car and I met him out at this library. And he was standing outside and he had this real somber look on his face. And he said, I wanted you to meet me here because I wanted to tell you this in person. You're going to fail.
Mm.
He paused. He just left it there. And I was crestfallen because I'd spent so much time with him working through some problems. And he just told me I was going to fail. And he said, "You're going to fail. You're not only going to fail, you're going to fail because you're black." Oh my God, why would you say this? I trusted you, had so much faith in you, and why would you? You must be an evil man. And he let me live in it for a little while. And he said, "Aaron, I have built hundreds of successful companies, and I have built thousands of failures. And what I learned through every failure was how to succeed better. Learn how to fail forward because you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And you have to build up a skin around it. You have to build up a tenacity around it. It's hard, and there's no book that can teach you this. It is really just the doing of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so my offer to you is to build something, even if it's just small, just a little thing,
Yeah.
right? But build something while you're in school. Maybe use it as a part of your education,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
that you can test theory. You know what I'm saying? You have a lot of tools available to you now that none of us had 5 years ago,
Right.
right? Um, but build something, bro. Poppy just sold. We thought it was going to sell for 1.5. It sold for $2 billion yesterday. Pepsi paid $2 billion for Poppy.
Mm.
They bought Siete for $1.2 billion, right? And those are CPG things. There are service things. There are all kinds of things. There's a lot of money in the world, and it's yours to be had. But you can't have it if you don't build something.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No,
I do.
Trey's a super intuitive dude. I just think the fact that he's on that path and nobody's knocked him off his square, for better or
He ain't
lack
gonna
of
get knocked
terms.
off the square. You can see it in his
Nah,
face.
nah. He always he always has me to kind of stand his ear to because somebody did it for me, and all I'm doing is paying it forward, just to make sure he stays the course. Because at the end of the day, we do need more black doctors. We
Yeah.
just need more people in those circles. Because I sat at a symposium when I first got my doctorate and got my first teaching job, and I'm literally in the college cafeteria, and there were three black educators in a room full of over 200 people,
Yeah.
and it pissed me off.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it, and I posted on Facebook, and I hardly ever do that, right? While I was there, pissed me off,
Yeah.
and I knew I had an uphill battle. I knew. Uh, Matter of fact, I tried to get a follow-on adjunct position at the same college, and kind of got crapped on for better lack of terms. It's all good because it manifested itself in other ways in other colleges. And
You know,
here I am.
there's a private school somewhere
Mm.
with an empty seat that doesn't
Yeah,
yet exist. It's neither the school nor the seat that has your name on it,
right.
begging you to come and teach some young black and brown children.
And that's why I'm so hell bent to get this certification I'm working on with the PMP. And I didn't do so hot on the first exam, and that was self inflicted. I take it again April 8th, and I've been studying because and that's like I told my wife, and I'm very serious, and I'll tell everybody listening that certification opens a lot of doors.
My wife is a
There's people that
Mm.
have that certification that don't have a doctorate that are in better esteem, and I hate to say this, than even I with a doctorate.
it's because it listen, Aaron, my wife's name is Aaron also. She's had
Uh,
her PMP now for I think 4 or 5 years, and then there's some certifications beyond that, right?
yeah, CAPM and all kind of
She
other stuff.
she
Yeah,
she she earned them, she studied for them, she got them, but also she works, right?
right.
She doesn't even know how valuable it is.
Oh no, it is extremely valuable,
She
and
Mm.
does
and
she's
to the
unaware of how
point where
valuable.
you can market yourself based on that, and then couple that with other education. It is, trust me, it is stressful and it is nerve wracking, but I will be glad when I'm on the other side.
Yeah.
Look, Principal Dr. Raul Randall,
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
I'm looking forward to today.
Man.
yeah,
You know, maybe that is that Masonic school that we have, that we should have.
right.
There's no reason we don't have it.
Yeah.
And again, I told you, and I said this before. You have to, when you're in this thing called Freemasonry, you have to live those examples. You have to utilize those working tools real time, real speed, and you can't just be faking it because if you fake it, people will see it, and that will turn. You will lose credibility. When you lose credibility, the fraternity loses credibility. And every time I get up and speak in front of people in any lecture, there's 100% authenticity
Yeah,
and sincere thought behind it and research behind it. Most importantly, it's not just fluff.
absolutely,
All right.
absolutely.
So
We
having
tell them,
said that, huh?
Socrates.
Yeah.
This is Socrates. We're not going to give you too much,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
will give you enough so that you will be curious to go and find the answers within yourself.
Well,
Yeah.
gentlemen, I say,
Yes, sir.
this is masonry. This is the masonry that I've grown to love. Really, just having conversations like this with. I mean, I think about it in my life. You know, where would I? We come from. I'm the youngest guy on the podcast. I'll say that. We come from different different generations, and very seldom would our paths cross. And I think masonry is a conduit that brings the us together in order for you old guys and your dotage to pass us young guys some
You heard me.
knowledge and some jewels.
Don't
you
let it
know
pass, Raul.
oh yeah, I'm ears wide
Yes,
open,
you
sir.
were an old man in your dotage.
Yes.
It is. It
He
is,
said you. I
man.
know he wasn't talking about me. I'm young
Nah. You know, I'm gonna take that right now, but I'm not gonna let that slide when we one on one on the phone.
I'm young. Right.
As a matter of fact, I definitely will plan to visit you, and there's nothing. Well, no, I take that back because we have an honorarium in May, but maybe for grand session or shortly after grand session, I'll come out your way because I intend to do that because we were supposed to do that a while ago. So I'll be very intentional about that because I know you're on the
You
first
talking about
Saturday.
me or Trey?
You come visit
Oh, I want
your
that.
home.
I want
Yeah,
that. I really
yeah.
do. I really want. And Trey, I want you. Listen, I have a I am very different from my predecessor.
Mm.
Um, my lodge is open. My lodge is open. I like to think of my lodge as an education platform, and we learn. I learn every time I get up in the east. I learn something new, and hopefully we're transmitting things. And but we need new blood. We need new corpuscles.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
coming in the lodge. We really do. Like it goes back again to this concept of multiple membership, but at the very least, we need to be sharing with each other in the process. You know, you come in my lodge as a mandatory requirement to visit my lodge, you must bring a lecture.
Mm. Sign me up.
Yeah, you know, it almost sounds like the 2 year master mason plan, which I'll definitely
Hmm.
revisit that. Right, I've been trying to just put out a lot of fires, but that'll get revisited. I promise. But again, Aaron, it's a pleasure. Uh, we're
Same.
gonna we're gonna talk soon, man, and thank you for your time. So
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I
Thank
love
you.
this thing that you built here, man. I love it. I love that you built it. I can't wait to see, what it becomes. I can't wait to
I'm gonna
see it
stop
as a
you and
national
say it's not something
platform.
I built. I'm gonna be honest with you that Trey and I had a conversation about this, and this was a collective thought, and everything from just the name, right? The
Yeah,
Trestle Board talks, right? We knew that Hiram, Grandmaster Hiram Rivers was designed to the Trestle Board at high noon, right, or the 6th hour, the 6th day of the week, and we
yeah,
wanted to do that, right? And it's kind of apropos that we try to do it on Fridays.
Hmm.
We just don't do it at high noon for work, because we're all at work or whatever. But it was a collective thought. Trust me, I'm not gonna take any credit for it
I
outside of
love
being
it.
a collective thought.
I love it. Well, look, to both of you, I appreciate the invitation. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate the conversation, the communion. Truly,
Mhm.
is fantastic. And look, I look forward to the next opportunity to get to come on and listen to you guys and break bread, mental
No
bread.
doubt, man. All right,
Absolutely.
man. Y'all be blessed. Let me
All
stop
right,
the live stream. All right, man. We're off the air now. So
done. Woo,
yeah.
boy,
Yeah. Hey,
that was
brother Aaron,
close.
where